Hi there, I just wanted to make a quick video for the benefit of the Norwegian police to try and explain the nature of the threats, blackmail, extreme harassment and isolation that has been, or extreme isolation that's been imposed upon my son and myself since 2014. This is my son Benjamin Fairvang, living in Larvik in Norway, and myself, his father, Mr. Crispin Galizia, living in Bournemouth in England. And the nature of the threats, I believe, are coming from two directions, from Norway and from England. And the reason for the threats is very simple. A post on my son from many different angles here. And this is as I say, from ANITA FEVANG, his mother, and her partner Ronnie, and all the family members, how many I'm not sure about. And from the UK side, my father and my family here in the UK. Again, how many members of the family are involved in this campaign of threats and isolation, I'm still not quite sure of, but it seems to be absolutely huge. As I say, all aimed at my son here, Benjamin Fairbank, and for one reason and one reason only, that he may possibly discuss some of the crimes committed by either side, and this is very serious crimes committed by both sides, with myself, therefore exposing the crimes committed by these parties, which could result in jail sentences on both sides very easily when you consider the serious nature of the crimes committed. Quite honestly, the threats imposed upon my son are to stop him from saying one honest word about what these people have done, because one honest word is all it would take to expose them. So it's, as I say, 5 years of intensive threats pointed at my son, I think, are very revealing of what's happening here and what's going on, and also an indication that these threats may carry on into the future, or even indefinitely, until one of us dies. For the simple fact, or the simple reason, just to cover up some very serious crimes that these both sides have committed here, which, to my mind, is a very poor excuse, not just an illegal excuse. And very briefly, I'm going to try and discuss the nature of the crimes committed here. I mean, I'll start on the Norwegian side with ANITA FEVANG. And this started all the way back in 2003 when she found a new boyfriend while she was living in England. This chap, Dan Marshall, was her boyfriend very briefly back in 2003. This is his own picture taken on Facebook. And this was the chap that answered the door when I knocked. Basically, I went to see my son after the breakup between myself and ANITA FEVANG. You may be familiar with ANITA FEVANG. And as I say, I went to visit her house to visit my son while he was 3 years old, only to be met by this chap who answered the door and told me that he didn't want me to see my son, he didn't want me to have any contact with my son, and he then just bent down and picked up a brick by his front door, ANITA FEVANG's front door, and tried to put the brick over my head, attacked me with it, and was literally dancing around the driveway, trying to put this brick over my head in order to try and discourage me from seeing my son and basically send me away forever, I presume. Now, ANITA and Dan felt bad about this brick attack shortly afterwards, and quite rightly so, and they decided in all their wisdom to go rushing down to the police station and try and cover up this brick murder attempt by falsifying police statements full of lies about me, about some silly little arguments that had happened between me and ANITA previously. Just a distraction for the judge, basically, nothing more than a huge diversion. And they were very successful. I mean, partly due to the fact that I was struggling with cancer at the time. I had a very serious cancer problem. I also had a head injury from a car accident. I was in quite a vulnerable position and an easy target for this kind of manipulation and these kind of lies, or such massive, blatant lies like this, to be exercised in a courtroom and fed to a judge, which is what happened. And as I nearly went to jail, as they were trying to cover up a brick murder attempt. I nearly went to jail for their offence. Can you believe that? And I had a restraining order put upon myself and all kinds of harassment pointed to me, as I was made to look like the guilty one. And quite honestly, just because I had a head injury and I was struggling with cancer for no other reason, really. These people were bullying me, as I say. So, and the result of this, repercussions of this, were really quite serious, because shortly as a result of all this harassment, my poor son Benjamin, at 3 years old, a short time after this ridiculous court case, had a very serious accident. And I believe that accident was in a large part due to the perjury, due to the perversion of justice, due to the lies and campaign of bullying against me. And the fact that I was made to look like the offender. As I say, this amounted to nothing more than a huge campaign of abuse against me and harassment that was struggling cancer patient at the time, and I was trying my best to be a good father and look after my son for half the week, and I absolutely love my son and still do. And was more than happy to spend half the week with him, in spite of the fact that I was as ill as I was at the time. And as I say, the fact I was so ill was clearly a motivating factor in all of these, in all this perjury and lies. But as I say, my son has a very serious accident as a result of this, and I believe that it was a result of the harassment, or partly as a result, and the contributions made, I believe, by these two lying in a courtroom, trying to cover up this brick murder attempt, made a very significant contribution toward my son having an accident, a very serious accident, and breaking his leg in half, which was a very, very disturbing episode. And I think is very indicative of the fact, an indication of the fact, the very fact he did have an accident was an indicator that there had been very serious perjury committed. There was a campaign of harassment happening against me. And as I say, I think, the fact he had such a serious accident is evidence of the extreme harassment that I was being subjected to at the time. It wasn't until about 2008 that mutilation started to show as a result. This is to my mouth. You can see now it's become more serious. This is only since about 2014 that it's become much more serious. And I believe this is also evidence of harassment, evidence of perjury, evidence of extreme abuse that happened in 2003. Now, because of all this evidence and the fact that I can use this evidence in a courtroom, means that now ANITA FEVANG is extremely nervous, and justifiably nervous, for very good reason, because I have truth on my side and I have right on my side, and I have all the evidence I need to prove it beyond any reasonable doubt. Now that means that she's alerted all her family. This also raises other questions, as I say, because the nature of the mutilations caused here from all this harassment also has raised questions about what happened to her father, ANITA FEVANG's father, and the suicide of her father, that maybe ANITA also has played a significant role, or maybe she also subjected her father to similar kinds of harassment and lies and abuse that she did myself, in which case it's quite clear that she may have played a significant role in encouraging her father to take his own life. And that also, as I say, incriminates this whole side of or this woman very clearly and very seriously, and provides a very good reason for her to level constant threats at my son to basically make sure that he does not say one honest word about any of it, which could obviously clearly land her in jail, even if only just for the perjury alone. I mean, committing such obvious perjury, trying to cover up a murder attempt, is a prisonable offence just on its own. So, as I say, that's not including all the other crimes that she clearly appears to be guilty of as well. Now, that's coming from the Norwegian side, and obviously there's a lot of relatives here that are joining, they're helping her, and this is regardless of how big her lies, regardless of how ridiculous her story. All these relatives, and I don't know how many, are all joining in, and friends, to try and protect this crazy woman. Regardless of how mad, her story is. Now, there's a similar situation also happening in England. My father has been very busy since 1994 using a cancerous tumour to inflict as much misery and torture upon me as he possibly can, as well as encouraging GPs here in this country to use this cancerous tumour in my sinus to exact as much misery and as much torture and as much pain upon me as they possibly can. It seemed, to be perfectly honest, that my father enjoyed this. I mean, as soon as I got the cancer and I was in pain and I was struggling, very obviously, he seemed to enjoy the fact that I looked unwell and enjoy using the cancer in my sinus to intimidate and scare me and manipulate me, intimidate me. He appeared to get a huge amount of satisfaction from that, and that may explain why he encouraged doctors here in Bournemouth not to give me a scan. I mean, my father is a doctor himself, so that might also explain why recently, just even verbally in phone calls, he was bragging and boasting about apparently how doctors have the power to use or can use cancerous tumours to inflict similar misery upon any unsuspecting patient. In other words, just use a cancerous tumour to torture, to terrorise, even seriously mutilate a patient if they so wish. If they decide that it's necessary. To my mind, that only proves that these doctors are unable to deal with some cancer problems. They don't know how to deal with these cancer problems and quite clearly shouldn't be dealing with these cancer problems if they're unable to diagnose them, unable to treat them properly, and just see it as a joke, really. If they're just using it, just having fun, just using the tumour to manipulate people, then I don't think they should be trusted with treating cancer with anybody. But as I say, that now outlines two very serious offences, on both sides. And as I explained on this side, there's a similar situation happening here. A lot of relatives and friends who are all clearly trying to help my father, who is again clearly guilty, been reported to the police. The police have admitted that he seems to be breaking a very serious law, but appear unable to enforce the law, or unable to hold him to account, unable to charge him with any offences, and at the moment still seem to be deciding or trying to decide what to do. But in the meantime, as I say, friends and family are frantically trying to protect him, even though it's perfectly clear that he's completely guilty, and admits it himself. He's admitted himself that he enjoys using tumours to exact torture and mutilate innocent people. So there's a similar situation happening from both sides. Obviously, friends and family exacting a lot of threats upon my son in Norway. What kinds of threats, I'm not exactly sure. The nature of the threats, I'm not exactly sure, but I've got a pretty good idea of roughly what's going on. And as you can probably imagine now, this is quite a lot of people. There's probably maybe 10, 15 people this side, 10, 15 people this side. That amounts to 30 people, just linking arms and creating a kind of wall, around my son to try and protect, these two people from a huge catalogue of very clear serious crimes. Now, this has reached a state of just becoming very clear, I think, and basically the only, as I say, the only reason that such a campaign of threats and isolation is being imposed is simply because my son's father, have seen the truth, simply because I've rumbled these people's lies. I've decided not to accept it, and I have reminded them of what I consider to be truth. They have decided that, obviously that this could be an enormous threat to them. This could expose their crimes, and as I say, what I'm trying to get is, what crime have I committed? I don't see that I have committed a crime, to be perfectly honest with you. The only crime I've committed is asking for the truth. The only crime that I can see I've committed is demanding the truth, and seeing through and exposing these people for the liars that they are. And this is it's a case of lies. People that tell big lies will get found out, and ANITA FEVANG is no exception to this. And I believe that this campaign of harassment, threats, isolation, blackmail, and suicide incitement has to stop. It's been going on for 5 years now, on a daily basis. Again, what exactly has been what threats have been levelled at my son, the exact nature of them, I'm not entirely sure about. But what I do know is that it's completely unjustified, it's completely illegal, and somebody should step in and stop it before it's allowed to get any worse. And very clearly, other children are being abducted, they're being kidnapped, in similar situations, from people like myself, vulnerable people like myself, who have been, again, the victim of perjury, murder attempts, torture, terrorism of quite extreme nature. I've not committed any serious crimes myself. I don't think I've even committed any small crimes, to be perfectly honest with you. So I don't see any, other than asking for the truth. If that's a crime, it can be, being honest and asking for the truth be a serious crime. It's madness, So at this point, I think that, as I say, someone has to step in now and terminate this ridiculous campaign of threats and isolation imposed upon both my son and myself. And as I say, if only for the fact that this has now become a very widespread problem, and is clearly happening to a lot of other children, and we don't know how many children have been abducted in similar circumstances or kidnapped in similar circumstances, being subjected to extreme harassment like my son has in similar circumstances. The numbers could be, hundreds, it could be thousands. We just don't know. And the fact that these people are getting away with it so easily and seem to be receiving police help, because I have called up the Norwegian police and asked for help. And they seem to, everybody seems to know these people are guilty, but as I say, these people are still receiving help from the police when they've committed, such serious crimes of perjury, attempted murder, torture, blatant terrorism, seriously mutilating people with severe mutilations. And I'm sitting here with all the evidence in front of me to prove this would be on any reasonable doubt. And I remind you that these people, have nothing. They have no evidence against me. No evidence of any crimes against me. Absolutely nothing. And I'm sitting here with a mountain of conclusive evidence, undeniable evidence, that's highly substantial. And I think for that reason alone, it shows that I'm 100% correct and I'm telling the truth. And as I say, I hope whoever's watching this, and the Norwegian police, whoever can help me to end this very sad campaign of isolation, threats and blackmail, which has been completely unjustified right from the start. And as I say, the fact that there has been, lastly, before I go, I'd like to say, the fact there has been a 5-year campaign of harassment imposed against myself, I think, of this nature, upon somebody badly mutilated who has committed no crimes, I think is, again, very revealing of what might have happened to ANITA FEVANG's father. The last 5 years amounts to nothing more than a suicide incitement campaign imposed upon myself, just trying to force me to suicide myself. She left me unable to eat food, living here on my own. She knows that I love my son. She knows I only have one son. She knows that if she can take my son away and stop contact, that might help me, encourage me to kill myself. So I believe it's very, very revealing of what happened to ANITA Fairbank's father, you know, and I believe it's becoming more obvious literally by the minute, you know, by the hour, by the day, you know, what's happening here and what the truth really is. And I hope the Norwegian police get to see this video. I hope you can appreciate the points that I've made, and thank you very much for your time.